Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. And while you are connecting with your angels, I will also be sharing with you a bedtime story. I will be with you for about an hour, and I'll be sharing with you in soothing, calming tones to help you drift off into a good state of rest. So whether you are listening as you go to sleep, I know some of you listen during the day. Whenever you listen, the angels will be with you, because bringing in angelic love for you is one of my favorite things to do. And if we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner. How's that for a cool job title? What it means is I get to help you connect with the angels. And angels are divine messengers of God. They are celestial beings. They are the embodiment of unconditional love. And we all have them. My experience of them is they're non-denominational, so they're not affiliated with a singular religion or spiritual path. And I have loved connecting with the angels so much that in 2006, I launched Illuminating Souls and started doing this full time. So in addition to being an angelic practitioner, I am a spiritual teacher. And I also like to say that I'm an encourager of souls. Because I love encouraging you, because you are precious in this world. And I believe we all could use more encouragement, especially in ways that inspire and empower us. So, I get to give myself my own job title, and so I say that I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And in this work, I facilitate angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more about what I do at my website, illuminatingsouls.com. You can also find me on my Facebook page of the same name. So lots of ways that we can connect. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you rest. As most of you know, I am someone who listens to sleep podcasts. And I've been listening to them for years. And they have become an essential part of my well-being and my sleep ritual. And that's what inspired me to create this for you, because I have found having a loving, friendly, sweet voice to keep us company, especially as we're trying to drift off, is a really wonderful thing. There are a few sleep podcasts that I listen to, and as soon as I hear the host's voice, something in me just sighs and feels a sense of comfort and familiarity. And so my hope is throughout the episodes, you'll get a chance to build your own relationship with this podcast. and with the energy that's infused here and with the different stories that I share with you. And there are a variety of episodes that I do. I will sometimes read to you from public domain materials. We have been reading from Anne of Green Gables. I've been reading Little Women, and I'm sure some other books will enter rotation. I also love going through old magazines with you, especially things from the turn of the century when you could buy 100 acres on Long Island for $3,000. Tales of old Hollywood. I read old cookbook recipes, and I also tell you stories from my own life. So I try to mix it up a little bit so the part of you that is listening won't get bored. And if you've been listening for a while, I would love to hear from you. What are your favorite kinds of episodes that I'm bringing to you? And if you are feeling so inclined, I would love it if you would leave a rating or a review on iTunes. It really helps people discover the podcast. We're mostly growing by word of mouth. So anything you can do to share the word would be much appreciated. As I record this, it is morning, and I got a little chilled right before recording it, and I'm so happy to crawl underneath the blanket fort. For those of you that don't know, I have this big cozy blanket that I throw over my monitor and my head to create a blanket fort. It helps to mute the sound, so it helps the ambient noise that is recorded, but it has become this beautiful sanctuary for me. The light grows dim, and I get warm and cozy. It is really that same kind of joy that I feel when I crawl into bed. I love cozy. Cozy is such a wonderful feeling, and so I share that with you. And I hope whatever you're doing right now as you listen, that you can feel the cozy waves of love that the angels and I are sending your way. So I invite you to take a deep breath in, just centering yourself in your own heart, knowing that you are worthy of beautiful, abundant love. That the angels and I are so deeply grateful for an opportunity to be with you. And even though they are already here, I'm going to call the angels in to join us. So beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. I ask that you bring forward waves upon waves of love and service to each of our beloveds here with us now. Angels, I ask that you lighten their burdens and help them come into alignment with the beauty of their own souls. Angels, I ask that you clear our energy fields through the heart of God, making it easier for us to walk our authentic path of light. And dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in, allowing the light to flow to you now. This light is abundant, and divine love is abundant. There is nothing you need to do to become worthy of it. One of the favorite teachings that the angels have brought forward for me is this, and I've shared with you before, but I'm going to share it with you again. I was trying to explain what divine love is like. But here on the earth plane, this concept of unconditional love can be confusing because truly we love with condition. Even if we don't want to, we do. We can try to circumvent our own judgments and our perception filters. But love can vacillate within us. Maybe not all the time, but sometimes. I remember as I was trying to really understand this concept of unconditional love, there was something that showed up on my timeline. The details aren't important. But it was a circumstance where I could not access love. And I struggled with it because I was in the middle of studying all about unconditional love and ascension and forgiveness, and it was hard for me to access those higher frequencies. And I realized that the goal is not to embody enlightened, ascended consciousness in this lifetime. My angels love to joke. They say, we hate to break it to you, but you did not incarnate to be an avatar in this lifetime. The journey here is to be a human being. And the human journey is complicated, and we are complicated. And we have good days, and we have bad days. And we have days when we can see through the eyes of love. And we have days when that perspective is more murky or harder to access. So this is what the angels shared with me one day about divine love, or unconditional love from the divine perspective. They said, can you believe, or can you imagine that God's love is more than the sun? And I said, of course, yes. And they said, okay, so imagine going outside on a sunny day. Is there any part of you that feels that you are not worthy of the sun? I said, of course not. I said, okay. They said, okay. Is there any part of you that feels like you're using up too much sun? That you're a sun hog? That you're soaking up so much sun that someone else will not get enough? I said, no. They said, okay. So that's God's love. Your prayers, your requests, your need for God's love does not diminish the quantity of love that is available for someone else. And there's nothing you can ever do to make you be unworthy of God's love. God's love does not exist on a polarity. God's love is much more like the sun. It is more than the sun. And the sun shines without prejudice. It shines because it is its nature to do so. And so this frequency, this vibration of exalted divine love exists always. It exists for you. It exists for every blade of grass. It exists for every star in the sky. It exists. And the human consciousness is a complicated mechanism by which we can fall into the belief structure that we are separate from divine love, or that we are unworthy of it, or that it exists for some and not for others. So take a deep breath in and allow this divine love to warm you the way you might allow the sun to shine upon your face on a beautiful spring day. To soak up the rays of light, to know that there is more than enough for you. It is only mankind's interpretation of the limitations of God's love that has caused confusion. You dear one, you are beautiful and you are precious and you are worthy of all the love that there is. And I'm so grateful to get to be with you right now, to help you remember this. And thank you for letting me share this metaphor with you. It is something that brings me so much comfort. You know, when they were sharing the explanation of God's love being more than the sun, they said, so if you're having beautiful weather, right? I live in Northern California, so more often than not, we have beautiful weather when other parts of the country are in difficult winters. And I said, is there any part of you that would not let yourself enjoy the beautiful weather simply because somebody else is in the middle of a blizzard? Your being in beautiful weather is not the cause of somebody else having difficulty. So here's the thing. If you're in the middle of a blessed part of your path, if things are coming easily to you, if you have had blessings bestowed upon you, receive them. Be in gratitude for them. And then you can invoke your generosity of spirit and attune to how you want to share your blessings in the world. I think it's such a beautiful thing when we give ourselves permission to fill our cups, to receive divine love, to count our blessings, to be in the blessing of our lives. It's been my experience that then gives us this battery pack to go out and be of loving service in this world. It's been my experience that opening to divine love, for me at least, has opened the sense of profound generosity about wanting to share it, not hoard it. It's not like, well, I've got mine, I'm good. It's like, no, I want to share this. I want to be a source of light in this world, even if it is in this very, very, very humble way of a podcast that maybe 50 of you are listening to. It gets back to the adage of to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to succeed. That every person is the universe embodied. And so I am so deeply grateful that I get to come forth and love you right now. How cool is that? I get to share love with you right now. And I'm going to breathe in and I'm going to affirm that you're sharing love with me too. And if you're not, if you're too tired to, then the angels are. Like there's an infusion of love happening here and now. And We are bathing in this love. Each of us in our own sovereign spaces, breathing in this love that the angels are bringing forward. This love that will help each one of us remember who we are as divine beings in human form. Oh, so breathe easier, my friend, knowing that you are loved and you are precious and you are a blessing in this world. And I invite you to take another deep breath in and allow your body to rest. You have permission to drift off. Not that you need my permission, but you get what I mean, right? Like, you have my blessing if it's time for you to drift off into sleep, the great mystery of sleep. And while you rest, your angels will be with you. And I'm going to shift and ramble my way into a bedtime story for you. So I have something fun for us to do together tonight. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I have done a couple of episodes where we talked through some of the TV seasons from the 70s, the 1970s, because I was a TV baby. I still love TV. And I love getting to go into the Wayback Machine with you and remember different times of life. So I went onto eBay and I purchased a couple of old TV guides from the 1970s. They were inexpensive. They were, I think, around $5 each, $5 each US. And I thought I would flip through the pages and we could see what was on TV, what the articles were about, what the ads were. If you were born after the 1970s, this may all be new to you. If any of you are of my generation, though, this may bring back memories. So this is the TV guide for March 4th through the 10th, 1978. And the program that is featured on the cover is a sitcom called On Our Own with Linny Green and Bess Armstrong. I don't really remember this sitcom, but that's what's on the cover of this particular edition. On the inside cover is an ad for Lipton tea, and it's with Don Meredith, who I think was a football player at the time, and I think did variety shows, if I'm not mistaken. And then on the next page is an ad that I didn't remember until I saw it, and then all these memories came flooding back. It's an ad that says, "Draw the pirate." And there is like a pen sketch of a pirate. How many of you remember these ads? It'd be like, draw the dog, draw the bear, draw the pirate. And it was trying to get you to draw this image. And the headline says, over $5,000 in prizes awarded monthly. And the ad says, you may win one of 5 995 art scholarships or any one of 75 $10 cash prizes. And it's for art instruction schools in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, in 1978, I don't remember being terribly jaded by ads. Of course, now we're all so savvy about marketing. As a kid, I remember thinking, wow, maybe if you're really talented, you're going to win something if you draw a great pirate. Of course, now we know better, right? This was a lead magnet for getting people to sign up for probably a very expensive art school. A $995 scholarship That was a lot of money back in 1978. So that meant that the school probably cost about $1,000. So we open up with Draw the Pirate, if you guys remember those ads. I will say there are quite a few cigarette ads in the magazine because back then we still allowed cigarette advertising in mainstream publications like this. We then come to a TV Q&A section where readers can write in with questions, and I just thought this one was funny. The question is, again, 1978, can a video game attachment damage my TV set? So I think in 78, the video game would have been Pong or something like that. The answer says, it probably would damage your brain first. We had such deep mistrust of video games then, not realizing what they would become and what a huge part of our life they would be. But I think that really speaks to how we were feeling about the advent of video games. And then somebody else writes in and says, my set has 70 channels on it, but I get programs on only a few of them, about 6. And this was before cable and satellite, that we were watching broadcast stations pretty much exclusively at that point. And they had to broadcast on a certain frequency, and there really were only a handful of stations in any market. So that's what that's referring to. Somebody else asks, what is the safe distance to sit from a color TV? How many of you remember being told not to sit too close to a TV because it would ruin your eyes? I remember, don't sit too close to the TV. There was this mistrust of the electronics. And gosh, now, right? The screen's right up to our faces when we watch on our phones and tablets and things like that. But this was 1978. Healthy mistrust of video games and sitting too close to the screen. That's what we were worried about. And then we could draw a pirate. So that gives you kind of a sense on where we're starting in this issue of TV Guide. And then we have an ad for a movie I don't remember, maybe you will, called Gray Lady Down, with Charlton Heston, David Carradine, Stacy Keach, and then also with Ned Beatty and some others. And the headline says, a collision at sea. Maybe I won't read this because you're trying to sleep. Anyways, it looks like it's a military thing. That's as much as I'll say, at sea. But I don't remember that movie at all. And then we come upon a feature where they're talking about some of the highlights for the week. And I just thought I would share this one with you because I loved all the people who are in it. It says on Sunday, Lucille Ball, David Jansen, Red Skelton, Michael Landon, and Dinah Shore have at least one thing in common. They're the hosts for TV The Fabulous 50s, a nostalgia special that stands out not only because there are more film clips than hosts, but because the clips themselves are long enough to give a sensible sense of the era. We also have some of the highlights of this week's movies, including The Way We Were, but I have to just share with you what they write about it. The Way We Were, that utterly irresistible 1973 schmaltz opera. Schmaltz, that's a Yiddish word for chicken fat. So, the utterly irresistible 1973 schmaltz opera co-starring Barbra Streisand, Robert Redford, and nostalgia. I just thought that was funny. The elegant production, intelligent direction, and superstar performances make it a work right down to the last sniffle and sob. also airing was Mahogany. How many of you remember that, with Diana Ross? And the song, Do You Know Where You're Going? I think, right? What do you know where you're going to? I think that was from Mahogany. Isn't it weird how things stick in your consciousness? But it was from 1975 theatrical release. It's with Diana Ross, Billy D. Williams, and Tony Perkins. Oh, and you know what else was airing? It's a third run of 1976's made-for-TV The Boy in the Plastic Bubble with John Travolta, about the boy who had to live in a plastic bubble because he was immune suppressed or immune compromised. Talk about classics, The Way We Were, Mahogany, and The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. So then we're going to skip right on over to Saturday early evening programming, because at 6 o'clock there is Jacques Cousteau, which for those of you who grew up in the era, the Jacques Cousteau documentaries were always so fascinating. So in this one, Cousteau's crew pursues recalcitrant hippos along Africa's lake, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, Tanganyika, Tanganyiki. Oh, here's a movie, science fiction, Space 1999. It says, Paul and Sandra look forward to raising a family as the Alphans prepare for an exodus to the planet. So they thought that 22 years later we would be leaving the planet. And then there's an episode of Nova. But here's what's interesting. So 7 o'clock p.m. So now we're in prime time. There's a Lawrence Welk episode. There's a Candid Camera episode. Hee Haw. And Live from the Grand Ole Opry. I will say that as a 15-year-old girl, I would have watched none of that. None of that would have been interesting to me. But that was me. It may have been something that you or your family enjoyed. Oh my gosh, there is an ad here about refinancing your house. And the headline says how to get money out of your house without selling it. But listen to these interest rates. So you could finance $2,500 at 17.8% interest for a real estate loan. That's enormous. So interest rates were really high back then. Things might not have had high price points, but the interest rates were really high. Okay, we'll keep going. Oh my goodness, you know what is here? So I wouldn't have watched Hee Haw, but Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew was on. And you know I would have absolutely watched that because of Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson. So it says a woman's misplaced handbag and a defector seeking asylum involved the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. So it was a joint episode between the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew in intrigue aboard a train through Central Europe. Okay, that's for sure what I would have watched. And also something called The Atom Chronicles was on. I don't know what that was. At 8 o'clock came The Bionic Woman. I would have watched that probably. It says an Indian youth tricked into stealing a super bomb and injured in the attempt tries telepathy to alert Jamie, played by Lindsay Wagner, to the weapon's location. Brilliant. Bob Newhart. And this looks like this was the first Bob Newhart where he was the therapist. So in this episode, hoping to expand her horizons, Carol, the receptionist, played by Marsha Wallace, quits her job with Bob and goes to work as a secretary for Elliott Carlin Real Estate. I'm sure, see, I'm laughing. That's how much I love that show. Just even the whole premise. That would be a funny episode. I'll have to go find where that's streaming and watch some of those. It's also opposite What's Happening, which is a repeat. So Dee, played by Danielle Spencer, sees the school psychologist on behalf of a bashful friend, only to be mistaken for the one with the problem. I love all of those with the mistaken identity. Also airing is the Tony Randall Show, Operation Petticoat, Truth or Consequences. And then at 9 o'clock, we have college basketball. We have Police Story. A SWAT negotiator is called in when 2 bank robbers take 5 hostages, one of them the deputy police chief's daughter. And this is starring Chad Everett, who was always so handsome. Chad Everett. Medical Center, right? Also airing on Saturday night was The Jeffersons. So Jenny goes to Harlem to research a thesis on inner city gangs, spurring a worried George and Tom to nervously venture after her. And then we come to the Saturday classic of The Love Boat, which is what I would have been watching. And I will not sing the song for you because I did that on another episode already, but you go ahead and sing that to yourself. Okay, I can't resist. The Love Boat, soon we'll be making another run. Okay, I'll stop there, even though I want to keep going, but I will stop because I love you and I don't want to subject you to my singing of the Love Boat theme. But let me tell you who was on the Love Boat this week. Passengers include Captain Steubing's salty ex-wife, Bonnie Franklin. You know, I think this is the very first episode of the Love Boat because if you remember the episode where I went over the 1978 television season, I went onto Wikipedia and I think this is the first episode. So, okay. So, passengers include Captain Steubing's salty ex-wife, Bonnie Franklin, a former centerfold, Meredith Baxter Burney, and her fiancé, Shelley Novak. And I assure you, Shelley was a man in this episode because they were not that woke yet. And a young woman, Brenda Sykes, trying to scuttle her boyfriend, Jimmy Walker. So it says an additional episode of The Love Boat follows this one, preempting regular programming. Also airing would be Maude, opposite of The Love Boat. And then at 10 o'clock, we have The Love Boat, Part 2. And in this episode, a faded comic, Phil Foster, trying for a comeback, wrangles a stand-up bit in the showroom. A college student, Robert Hedges, who you may recall was on Welcome Back, Kotter, hopes to lose his virginity before returning to shore. A sprightly senior citizen, Ruth Gordon, plays matchmaker for her granddaughter, Patty Duke Aston. And then opposite was Kojak, which I seem to recall my family watched. My dad probably liked Kojak with Telly Savalas. And in this episode, a former movie queen who is secretly carrying her jewelry collection disappears moments after arriving at Kennedy Airport. All right, and then on Soundstage, which aired on PBS, it was the Doobie Brothers in concert, which I love the Doobie Brothers, but I'm sure I would have been watching The Love Boat or Kojak. And because it is the 70s, there is the requisite ad for a diet supplement now. lifetime freedom from fat with doctor's amazing coffee off program for cup to cup weight loss. Amazing willpower in a cube turns ordinary coffee or tea into the most dynamite fat melting aid ever developed by medical science. It actually shuts off your appetite for hours at a time. Shrinks your waistline down as much as a full size in 7 days. 24 hours up to 2 pounds gone. 48 hours up to 6 pounds gone, and that's just the beginning. This is why we were so effed up about our bodies and weight, because we grew up thinking this stuff worked. This is from a place called, Mead Wilson Pharmacal in Philadelphia, and they were charging $6.95 for a 21-day supply. Well, okay then. We know that didn't work, right? You know that doesn't work. Yes, don't get excited that we had some kind of magic fat burning pill back in the 70s that we are withholding from you now. It didn't exist. So now it is Sunday evening, and you have the choice of watching The World of Disney, and they are showing a race for survival welds a partnership of necessity between an aging lion grown too slow to hunt and a speedy greyhound in search of help for his master, a game warden, trapped in the wreckage of his plane on an East African desert. And the headline says, Cheetah versus Greyhound. Well, okay. I would not have been watching that. Also, opposite that, 60 Minutes. Again, we were a 60 Minutes household. That for sure would have been on in our house. Opposite the Hardy Boys, which meant that I was probably in the basement watching Hardy Boys because, again, Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson. So Hardy Boys was on twice that weekend. I would have probably been very happy about that. And in this episode of Hardy Boys in Egypt, Bedouins kidnap a girl who discovered they were selling fake artifacts. I'm sure I would have watched that. And then we also have what I shared with you before, TV, The Fabulous 50s. And you know what? I'm going to read to you some of the clips they're showing because you might remember some of them if you are in my generation or a bit older. Comedies, monologues, and sketches featuring Milton Berle, Bob Hope, Ernie Kovacs, Jackie Gleason, and Art Carney, and Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca. The westerns include Gunsmoke and Bonanza. Situation comedies include Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, and I Love Lucy. The specials include Frank Sinatra, Eva Marie Saint, and Paul Newman in a musical version of Our Town. Really? That would be interesting to see. Rosalind Russell in Wonderful Town, Mary Martin flying in Peter Pan. I remember watching that. I loved that. And Fred Astaire dancing with Barry Chase. Variety shows songs by Tony Bennett, Perry Como, Edie Gourmet, and Steve Lawrence. Crime dramas include Peter Gunn and The Untouchables. I would imagine we would watch that. Opposite that was Rhoda, which I also watched, and How the West Was Won, which I would not have watched. Also airing on Sunday night was All in the Family, which we would have watched. Mike accepts a lucrative offer to teach in California, and the Stivicks start prepping for their cross-country move. And playing opposite of that would have been The Way We Were. Maybe we would have watched that. I know my mom loved Robert Redford, because who didn't back then, right? And it looks like on PBS, Anna Karenina was airing. Also airing at 9:30 was Alice. Mel, played by Vic Tayback, reaches his 50th birthday, which doesn't bother him nearly so much as not getting the surprise party he said he didn't want. Okay, so now I feel kind of old. So I remember Mel as being really old because, of course, I was very young then. And now to think that Mel is 10 years younger than me now, I don't know. That's doing something to my consciousness. Also on Saturday night is Carol Burnett, who was not watching Carol Burnett on a Saturday night. And let's see, in this episode, Betty White and Steve Martin join in a musical finale spoofing beach blanket movies and appear in a return of As the Stomach Turns, this time a takeoff on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Wow, all worlds converge. Other sketches include Betty reprising her family role as Eunice's sister Ellen, who is preparing to receive important guests for her birthday when Eunice and Mama drop in uninvited. I loved that show. And then we have the classic of love American Style, Truer Than the Red, White, and Blue. And in this one, John Davidson and Wes Stern as brothers vying for a huge inheritance by being the first to marry and have a child. Oh, the hijinks of Love American Style. We have an ad for Inventors Wanted. Okay. Recognition, financial reward, or credit for all inventing it first may be yours. Okay, so there you go. That could have been your destiny. And then I thought we could take a look at what was airing on Monday morning. So on a weekday morning, you would have the talk shows, right? Today with Tom Brokaw. He was hosting it at that point. CBS News with Stahl. Would that be Leslie Stahl? Was she doing it back in 1978? I don't know. Good Morning America. Oh my gosh. Guests include singer-actor Sean Cassidy. This would have been March. I would have been in school. I would have missed that. Oh my goodness. And also Romper Room. Do you guys remember Romper Room? And she would hold up the mirror. And she would look into the mirror and say, I see Bobby. And I see Susie. She never saw Laurel. I was very disappointed about that. At the 8 o'clock hour, we have Captain Kangaroo, which I didn't watch it in 1978, but certainly when I was younger. The new Mickey Mouse Club. More Good Morning America. At 9 o'clock, we have Phil Donahue. And now we get into syndicated stuff with Dick Van Dyke. And then the Mike Douglas Show, for those of you who remember Mike Douglas as a talk show host. This episode has joining co-host. So he must have been on vacation or something. So joining co-host Christy McNichol are David Frost, actor Billy Crystal, singer Anne Murray, and an expert pancake flipper. I used to love Christy McNichol. I felt such a kinship for her because we were around the same age. And this must have been Billy Crystal just as soap was hitting its stride. So early Billy Crystal. Also, again, it's the same Phil Donahue episode, just on a different station. At 9:30, Young and the Restless was on. 10 o'clock, you could choose from Sanford and Son, a game show called Tattletales. I don't know what that one was. Dennis the Menace, which is probably what I would have watched. Edge of Night, and General Hospital, which I was not watching in 1978. And then at 10:30, Hollywood Squares. And in the squares that week, you will find John Amos, John Biner, Vicky Carr, Robert Conrad, and Jeb Adams, with George Goebel, Paul Lind, Bill Macy, Rosemarie, and Leslie Uggams, hosted by Peter Marshall. In terms of syndication, we've got Gomer Pyle and Family Affair. At 11 o'clock, we have Wheel of Fortune. And in syndication, we've got Happy Days. And in this episode, Dropout Fonzie plans to drop in on high school graduation ceremonies as a graduate, first of 2 parts. We have Green Acres, Oliver's parody problem. The Farm Bureau refuses to let him plant 160 acres of wheat. Something called Not for Women Only. I have no idea what that was. Also, we have Match Game. Do you guys remember Match Game? With Patty Duke Aston and Richard Dawson. A soap opera called Love of Life. I don't remember that one. Family Feud. And in syndication, we have Bewitched. Darren is accused by the police of stealing an antique bed warmer. And I have to tell you, I loved Bewitched growing up. But now, as a mystical, magical woman, I have such issues with Bewitched that Samantha cannot be trusted with her own magic. And Darren has to somehow constrain her. Oh my God, it bugs me now. Like, hello, I have all this magic. I am a magical person. I'm a magical woman. I don't need you to be telling me what I can do with my magic. So, I don't know. Now I think Bewitched is, I still would watch it, I suppose. I'm just saying, let Samantha have her space, right? At the noon hour, we have a variety show called Bob Braun. I don't know who that is. Let's Make a Deal. Medical Center. A famed surgeon, Robert Reed, shocks his family and colleagues by requesting a sex change operation. Well, that was way ahead of its time. We also have Young and the Restless and the $20,000 Pyramid. Mike Douglas, from Hollywood, guests include co-host Suzanne Summers, actors Charlton Heston, Fred Astaire, and Jane Fonda, and the singer is Paul Anka, and Mike's wife, Genevieve. Yeah, I remember watching Mike Douglas. Oh, here. Opposite of it is Ryan's Hope. I don't know that I was watching Ryan's Hope at the time, but I would go on to watch Ryan's Hope. Also opposite Mike was Dinah, which was Dinah Shore, for those of you who did not know. And her guests are Bob Hope, Joan Rivers, Lauren Hutton, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. That would have been early Arnold for sure. At 1 o'clock, we have Search for Tomorrow, which was a soap. All My Children, which I wasn't yet watching. At 1:30, we had Days of Our Lives and As the World Turns. Let's see what else we had coming up. General Hospital is airing in terms of syndication at 3 o'clock because now kids are coming home from school. The soap Another World, and in syndication we have Bugs Bunny and Friends and Three Stooges. Also in syndication we have All in the Family, Popeye, New Mickey Mouse Club, Little Rascals. At 4 o'clock, it looks like there are some movies on. Oh, this is interesting. The Pigeon, 1969. A fast-paced suspense thriller about a private eye played by Sammy Davis Jr. trying to protect a girl who doesn't want help, with Ricardo Montalban, Dorothy Malone, Pat Boone, and a woman named Victoria Vetri. Okay, well, that just sounds good all the way around. Sammy Davis Jr. and Ricardo Montalban, I would have watched that. Well, not in 1978. Now I would, though. Also airing in syndication was Marcus Welby. Consuelo resists several gynecologists' advice to undergo a hysterectomy. Again, I don't know that they were talking much about hysterectomies back in 1978, so that may have been a little bit ahead of its time. We also have another episode of Dinah Shore, and here we have the actors Victor French and Annette O'Toole, the Spinners musical group, psychologist Wayne Dyer, so Wayne is getting on the scene here, and singer Samantha Sang. It would be interesting to hear what Wayne Dyer was talking about in 1978. Also airing would have been Sesame Street, Tom and Jerry, Porky Pig, and the good old Gilligan's Island. We definitely watched Gilligan's Island. In this episode, Gilligan uncovers a hieroglyphic tablet that may reveal an escape route. That's what we would have been watching for sure when we got home from school. At 4:30, we have another episode of Mike Douglas. From Hollywood, co-host Hal Linden is joined by John Biner, actress Danielle Spencer, the Fifth Dimension Singing Group, and columnist Irma Bomback. Also airing in syndication is Petticoat Junction. Can you hear the train right now? If you didn't know, Petticoat Junction would start with this chugga chugga of the train. Also was Emergency 1, which I would have watched. So Gage, Randolph Mantooth, who of course I thought was cute, and DeSoto, Kevin Tighe, find duty at a football event. More work than fun. Right? How many remember that? Emergency. And Leave It to Beaver and Gilligan's Island. I would have probably been watching Emergency. At 5 o'clock was Big Valley, which I did not watch. It was a Western, but I'll read this for you in case you watched it. A fiery Greek farmer's refusal to pay exorbitant railway rates makes him and the Barclay brothers targets of a crooked station master. Also airing opposite that was Brady Bunch, which I would have been watching, Mr. Rogers, oh, we love him, Gilligan's Island, Andy Griffith, I Love Lucy, and Bewitched. Oh my gosh, so much to choose from there. We watch a lot of Andy Griffith in my house now, just so you know. My husband loves that show. It helps him decompress. So who am I to keep him from Andy Griffith? It airs on TV Land, I think. So we watch a lot of Andy Griffith in this house. At 5:30, we have Adam 12, again in syndication, and Mary Tyler Moore. So in this episode, Mary gets the chance to produce an entire show by herself. Opposite that is Electric Company and Brady Bunch. In this episode of the Brady Bunch, Abby Lane plays a much-married bombshell who shakes up the Brady's happy home. And then there is a Bewitched episode. Oh my gosh, at 6 o'clock, Zoom is on. Come on and zoom, 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 zoom. I for sure would have watched that show all the time. I loved Zoom. I don't know that I was watching it when I was 15 years old. I was probably younger when I loved it. Opposite that was My Three Sons and the Mod Squad. Okay, so let's come to prime time. We have a lot of game shows. To Tell the Truth, Joker's Wild, Newlywed Game. So this isn't prime time yet. This is still earlier in the day. Gong Show. Oh my God, who remembers the Gong Show? Mitzi McCall, Charlie Brill, and Rex Reed are the celebrity judges. And these are the stars for Hollywood Squares. which is Ed Asner, Sandy Duncan, Paul Lind, Rose Marie, Vincent Price, Elke Summer, Ken Stabler, Mel Tillis, and Jonathan Winters. I used to love that show. There is a Brady Bunch episode also airing in syndication where Carol, played by Florence Henderson, campaigns to save a neighborhood park. At 8 o'clock, we have Little House on the Prairie, where Charles, played by Michael Landon, is given the shattering news that Mary, Melissa Sue Anderson, is going blind. That was a really sad episode. And there is nothing medicine can do to prevent it, first of 2 parts. There is a special called The Body Human. College basketball is airing, as is $6 Million Man, which is what I would have been watching. A notorious terrorist with international extortion on his mind steals a sophisticated American missile and a top-secret Russian rocket launcher. Just the job for the $6 Million Man. Right, Steve Austin, I think was his name. There was National Geographic. And then at 9 o'clock, MASH is airing. So at this point, we are in the era of MASH with BJ Honeycutt. A report that the provost marshal is investigating BJ merely signals the impending visit of BJ's practical joking buddy. I remember that episode because we watch MASH all the time. One Day at a Time, this episode, Julie, played by Mackenzie Phillips, guiltily plans to close out her checking account after it is unduly credited with over $100. At 10 o'clock, we have Lou Grant, which I would have watched. I loved that show. A grieving Rossi, played by Robert Walden, strives to continue the investigation into radioactive contamination begun by a good friend who met a, quote, accidental death. And then to wrap this up, let's look at late night. So on Johnny Carson, the scheduled guest host is Bill Cosby. So Johnny would have been on vacation that week. So it was Bill Cosby with Jimmy Walker and mime trio Mum and Chance. Oh my God, I can't believe I remember them. And comic Bill Saluga, who I don't remember. And airing opposite of that was McMillan and Wife. And also then opposite that is Police Story. And it looks like they were maybe re-airing the ABC News with Harry Reasoner and Barbara Walters, which I remember that. You know what else was airing at late night? Well, first off, there was Beretta, which was in syndication at that point. But Mary Hartman, how many of you remember that? And Tomorrow with Tom Snyder. He had his late night show. And this one is with Mickey Rooney and former pro football player Gail Sayers. Okay, and can you believe that only took us through Monday? That only brought us through 3 days of that week. So we'll return to it another time. And we'll get through Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and see what was airing in March of 1978. So thank you for letting me share this with you. Again, I would have been I know how old I would have been. I would have been coming upon my 15th birthday. So my birthday is in May, and in May of 1978, I would have turned 15. If we're being specific, I would have been just at the tail end of 14 years old then. And we may have had a color TV at that point. I don't remember. And I think we had a black and white TV in the basement. We did not have cable. And we pretty much watched by consensus back then. So, well, that brought me a lot of happiness. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed sharing it with you. I hope that at some point during the past hour, if your intention has been to fall asleep, that you have drifted off into the good vibes we are bringing to you. And I send you a lot of love. And if for some reason you're still awake and would like to have some more companionship, there are lots of episodes in the archive you can tune into. So I love you very much. I send you blessings. I am so grateful for you, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you. Sweet dreams.